Frances Beatrice Bradfield OBE phrase, October 9, 1895, February 26, 1967, was an aeronautical engineer at the Royal Aircraft Establishment, RAE. She worked at RAE Farnborough, where she headed the wind tunnel section. Here she mentored many of the younger male engineers who joined the RAE. Early life and education. Frances Bradfield was born in 1895 and in 1914 came up to Newnham College, Cambridge, graduating with a second-class BA degree in mathematics in 1917, Royal Aeronautical Establishment. Sometime after graduating from Cambridge, probably around 1919, Bradfield joined the Royal Aerospace Establishment, RAE, at Farnborough, Hampshire, where she spent her entire career research aeronautics and specializing in wind tunnel research. Bradfield's earliest published research at the RAE, credited gender-ambiguously to F. B. Bradfield, was published in December 1919 on wind channel test of Bristol Pullman body. During her first decade and beyond, Bradfield published her wind tunnel research with great prolificity, publishing 2 research papers most year. In the early 1930s, before 1934, Bradfield worked with George Douglas, then head of wind tunnels at RAE Farnborough, as his mathematician. Her job was to liaise between Herman Glaert, then head of aerodynamics department, and Douglas. Glaert was killed in an accident in 1934, and so Douglas was appointed head of aerodynamics department and Bradfield became the head of wind tunnels, more informally known as the small wind tunnel section of the Model Research Department, a role she held for the remainder of the 1930s and throughout World War II. In 1935, Bradfield appeared in the Imperial Calendar and Civil Service list for this year. Not being an engineer, Bradfield insisted on having Charles Callan as her supporting engineer, in order to ensure that what they did in the wind tunnels was sound engineering-wise. In March 1939, Bradfield, in collaboration with D. L. Ellis, presented a paper before the Royal Aeronautical Society on the use of model data in aeroplane design, published in the Women Engineer. In November 1939, Bradfield was listed as a senior scientific officer at the Royal Aircraft Establishment at RAE Farnborough. In December 1941, Bradfield was one of the 2 female associate fellows of the Royal Aeronautical Society doing important work at RAE Farnborough. By 1946, when Joanna Weber joined the low-speed wind tunnels division at RAE Farnborough, Bradfield was head of the aerodynamics department. Bradfield's female colleagues at RAE Farnborough included Weber and Beatrice Schilling. Awards and recognition. At some point between 1919 and 1935, Bradfield became a member of the Women's Engineering Society, WES, but was not a particularly active member and was only mentioned occasionally in their journal, The Women Engineer. Bradfield became a Fellow of the Royal Aeronautical Society, phrase, in 1944 and won their bronze medal in 1949. In 1947, Bradfield was awarded an OBE in recognition of her role as Principal Scientific Officer at RAE Farnborough. Later life. Bradfield died in Poole in 1967. A former colleague, John Green, described Bradfield, known as Miss B, as an exacting but kindly boss who had a powerful influence on the generation of young graduates who were posted into aerodynamics department at the beginning of the war, an influence that they carried with them through their later careers into senior positions. Bradfield's biography was published by the Oxford Dictionary of National Biography on 9 May 2019 as part of their support for the Women's Engineering Society's centenary.